Maxim Shaposhnikov and Frank Ruxel. Row 14, Anthony Abbas. Watch him for a charge through. That's what he did in the previous 2 races. And Harold Skokaklis. And completing the grid at the back on row 15, Alexis Corso and Guillaume Berthaud. A 9-lap race, Heat 3 for the DD2s and DD2 Masters coming up next. They're firing up. Those of you tuned in to RGMMC TV can see behind our graphics that these karts have taken to the circuit for the first of their 2 formation laps. Well, Sean Babington, you heard what he had to say before all of today's action. I'm sure that he'll be delighted with the way things have unfolded. Maybe wasn't quite the race conditions, the weather conditions that were expected, but all's well that ends well in terms of race victories. Zenderua, a 2nd place and a 3rd place, no doubt thinking, I've got to get a race win. He doesn't have to get a race win. It's tomorrow that counts. But Zen, very, very much a proud guy, would love to close today by saying, yeah, maybe I lost a couple of races today, but I showed I could win race 3. And what about Andreas Bachmann? Never had a bad race in about the last dozen races I've watched him. Well, we've got somebody who's come to a halt at the hairpin. I don't have my glasses available, my binoculars. He's got himself going, so let's try and identify. It wasn't one of the front starters, kart number 665. In fact, it was somebody well towards the back, I think, at 665, because I can't see his name. It's Chris Adams. I should have recognised Chris Adams. Well, Christoph Adams, very much one for a little bit of gamesmanship, not suggesting that that wasn't a genuine, innocent situation. But we have seen Christoph play a little bit of mind games before. Things not been going so well for him in this event. An event, of course, where he's been on the podium, now let me try and see, at least 3 times, if not 4. So a very, very fruitful event, the Rotax Winter Cup for Christoph Adams, but then that applies to most of the Euro Challenge rounds and the International Open as well. The guy with more RGMMC trophies in his cabinet than anybody else, and by a big margin. The driver who's driven more Rotax Euro Challenge racing rounds than anybody else. Racing laps, that is. Why not any more than Dennis Kroes, who's never missed one? Because Christoph Adams for several seasons doubled up in Masters as well as DD2. So when he was doubling up for about 4 consecutive seasons, clocked up more racing laps than any other driver we've had. Yes, it is Chris Adams, and he's not got himself too close. Again, I just feel this is a little bit of Adams kidology, you know. He's not screaming round to try and join them. He's scheduled to be starting on row 12. As things stand at the moment, he's not going to get any closer than the back row 15, unless, of course, they go round again. And in fact, Joel Blanc is pointing to the fact that Chris Adams hasn't yet joined, but let's see if we do go for a first start. We're racing, and Sean Babington gets a flyer in front of kart 605 Zenderua. Zenderua's best start by far, and Oriol Dalmau Caballero caught napping a little bit this time. So Zenderua's best start by a big margin, but the only thing against Zenderua's fastest start by a big margin is that Sean Babington himself had a really, really swift one. Well, looks as if although the rain has stopped for a while, that they're just a little bit greasy surfaced up there, picking their way a little bit carefully. Sean Babington's lead as we drop down the spear to the the left-hander at the return home straight. Little bit circumspect as Sean's been driving all the time. And now Zenderua potentially under a little bit of threat by Oriol Dalmau Caballero, and Caballero picking his way on the inside, was looking if there was a route past Zenderua. There certainly wasn't. Andreas Bachmann looking very menacing in 4th place. Well, he was moments ago. They've rather stretched out a little bit now. And Chris, the mood down there on the grid, appeared to be one of fairly cautious optimism by most you spoke with.
Yeah, I think so. You can feel it's a little bit more tense than the first two heats, because I know that as we go into the weekend, each race becomes more and more important. This one is really important in terms of who's going to be where on the grid. Stays like this, it's Sean Babington that's going to be on pole though, isn't it? Because he won the first race, he won the second race, he's winning the third race at the end of the first lap. Second, Zendarua at the moment, Oriol Damo Caballero third. I don't know if you picked it up on the screens, but right at the end of the second formation lap, coming through turn 13, from, what was he, on the fourth row of the grid, Henry Eastope had a spin and a real scary moment because he hadn't got long to get back in position, but he kept it around pretty quickly, did a 360, got going again and just about had time to get back into position. So again, somebody having a moment on the formation lap. Henry 7th at the end of the first lap though, so it hasn't affected things. Sean Babington down the middle straight then from Zendarua, Caballero and Batman third and fourth still, and then we've got Josh Collins going very well in fifth place. We spoke to Josh earlier on today on the grid, and he was feeling pretty happy with the way things were going, having stepped up to this level of European competition. Michael Christensen has been very impressive so far. Is going well again in this one. They're in sixth position. 7th is Eastope, Beji is 8th, and you've got Mikko Leiner, the Finnish driver, in 9th place, is the best master at the moment.
So coming round to complete another lap. 7 remaining now, or is that 8 remaining? Sean Babington, yes, 7 to go. Sean Babington's margin 1.45, and Zendarua has got half a second on Caballero, but none of those drivers in the top 12 look as if they're in a position to make a threat. So let me have a peep a little bit further down. As Chris just said, Mikko Line leading the Masters up in 9th place, and I don't think a Master has been any higher than Mikko Line's 9th place throughout the day. And Martin Pearce, oh please God, can Martin stay where he is? 13th place at the moment. It's not that I'm just a Martin Pearce fan against anyone else, it's just that I don't want to see Martin have yet another disaster to follow the two that he's already had. Guillaume Bertrot from Stone last into the top 20 at 18th. Not sure if that was what Chris mentioned.
Through they come then. Leaders coming out of turn 10. Into 11 goes the race leader, Sean Babington. He's going to head down this back straight now. Flat out, downhill, flat out down through the kink and into the hairpin at turn 12. Under brakes he now goes. There is the race leader on screen. They're in third and fourth positions are Oriol Damo Caballero and Andreas Batman. And Andreas Batman looks a little bit closer on this lap. As they come out of that hairpin through the next turn at 13, it's very wet still off the line. So most of the track has got a dry or drying line now, but it's still a big wet puddle on the outside of 13, which they've got to be very cautious about. There you can see them coming through. 1.3 seconds the advantage that the race leader had at the start of this lap. 6 to go still. And the race leader, Sean Babington, 1 minute 24.3, 1 minute 24.275 for Zendarua, 1 minute 24.280 for Oriol Damo Caballero. So second and third, just ever so slightly quicker on that lap than the race leader. They're certainly staying with him, aren't they? And Sean Babington is not stretching away anymore in this race. Second and third, in turn, have now begun to pull away from Andreas Batman, the Swede, in fourth place.
It's strange how Andreas Backman can get to within 18 inches of Caballero, and then that gap stretches. On this occasion he's not got nearly as close as he had, so maybe, as you said in commentary, Caballero just kicking away from him a little bit. Moments ago Caballero putting a serious threat towards Zendarua, but that has just evaporated a little.
Florent Lambert, who last time out had a really good race to win the Masters class and was in 8th place overall, he's just about to thunder up the inside of somebody to get 1 place back, but he's outside the top 3 in the Masters class at the moment. Mikko Lane, the Finnish driver, is 9th overall. He leads the class in karts 634. Morten Nom, his countryman, is also going pretty well. You've got to look back to 16th place before you see Martin Pearce as the next master. So 9th, 16th, and then you got Louis Baudrand in 17th place as the third best master. So Mikko Lane absolutely flying in the top 10. The Finnish driver going well, but up front the gap continues to come down. It's down to 1.4 seconds now as Darua and Caballero try to close in on Babington here.
Well, we're coming towards the halfway point in this 9-lap race, and Sean Babington's lead is 1, a clear lead, but 2, not quite the lead that it was. And with half the race still remaining, can't be chalking in Sean Babington as a certain winner of this one, even if the weather conditions and track conditions were ideal. Caballero getting a little bit closer to Derua, and Bachmann not nearly as close to Caballero as he has been. Now, Zen Derua, has he got the setup that, well, having said that, there's part of my answer, as Sean Babington kicks away far more strongly on the second half of the back straight, the lower portion of the lengthy back straight here at Campillos. Sweeping round to complete lap 6. So 6 gone, 5 remaining. Sean Babington's lead, 0.789 of a second over Zen Derua. Caballero 0.6 of a second, or 0.58 of a second behind them. But Caballero again, just looking as if this could be the beginning of a little threat. You know, Chris, you just get the impression that Zen Derua is getting closer to Sean, then you get the impression that Caballero is getting a little bit closer to Zen Derua, and then nothing quite happens. But you just read it as being a potential race here rather than a procession.
Yeah, on that last lap, Babington was a fraction quicker, but the 2 laps before that, you're right, Zen Derua was closing in. And I'd say at the start of this lap, certainly the first sector, Derua, the Belgian, and Caballero, the Spaniard, closing in on the British driver. And the previous lap to this one, Josh Collins in 5th place was actually the quickest man on the track. And he's working hard to try and bridge the gap now to Andreas Bachmann. And what was the lap time like last time around? 1:24.1 for Bachmann, and no, 1:25.2 for Collins. So it wasn't quite as quick on that lap. So it looks like Bachmann's solid in 4th place. And 2nd and 3rd, though, well, Zen Derua is trying to catch the leader, but he's also having to try and defend his 2nd place now from Caballero as they come through the wettest part of the course, the last couple of turns back onto the start-finish straight, and Caballero has a little feint down the inside into turn 1. There's never enough to trouble Zen Derua, but he got definitely better drive out of the last corner and closing up into turn 2. So 2nd and 3rd now are running within about 3 inches of each other as they go up to the top or the middle of the hill, up through turn 4 rather, down to turn 5, and climbing up then to turn 6 then at the top of the hill. But it's still Zen Derua that holds on to 2nd place, but there was pretty relentless pressure coming from the Spaniard.
Well, I
in
agree
3rd.
with your read on that. I really did think that Caballero was putting a serious challenge on Zen Derua, and I'll go so far as to say, had Derua made any kind of a mistake, that Oriol Delmar Caballero would have punished it. He's definitely looking for a place in front of Zen Derua is Oriol Caballero, and Sean Babington, a tiny little glance over his right shoulder, showing him that at that particular point Zen Derua was within about 4 kart lengths, but now that margin doubles, but the game closes up under braking.
Josh Collins is coming under real threat now, his 5th place, from Michael Christensen, the Danish driver. I think as the track dries out, Josh's setup is just not working for him, and when he was at one point catching the top 4, he's now really fallen away from them, and I think he's going to get passed very soon by Christensen. So number 620, Josh Collins in 5th place, with Michael Christensen hot on his heels now and looking the quicker of the 2 in the number 638 kart. The orange and yellow helmet of Josh Collins goes out through turn 2, up into turn 3, and then up to the left-hander at turn 4. Also in that group, you've got Henry Easthope. So he's bookended the Danish driver by a couple of British drivers, and I reckon Alex Beggi, the Italian, is catching them as well. So 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th becoming quite a tight battle with just under 2 laps to go now.
Well, we've had this same positional race for very much half of the race, if not more, but again, as I said with Chris moments ago, I just believe there's something else still to come. Let's just see if we can see where that prizing open might be. Zen Derua isn't getting any closer to Sean Babington. Oriol Delmar Caballero seems to have thrown away the advantage that he had of about 3 laps ago. Just trying to look at the distance, Andreas Bachmann was 0.9 of a second behind previously, so on the face of it, as we come to start the last lap, there's no potential challenge. You see on the graphics, those of you tuned into RGMMC TV, a full second between Andreas Bachmann and Caballero. Sean Babington, who I thought might have come under pressure, looks as if he's relatively safe. I daren't say any more than that, partly because Zenderua doesn't seem to be driving with any greater conviction than when he was driving conservatively early on. Compare that with the Lars Lamberell drive in the previous race where he came through.
I suppose the question is Zenderua just sitting there? Has he got a bit in hand, but he's saving it all for tomorrow? He's just trying to get through this. Or is he going absolutely flat out just to try and keep Sean Babington in his sight? I'm not sure of the answer there, but I'm not sure Sean's going to have it quite so easy in the races tomorrow as he's having it here. And I'm not saying that they're making it easy for him.
No,
Sean
I
has driven brilliantly, hasn't he, Sean? Absolutely brilliantly. But Zenderua, you think there might be a little bit more of a kitchen sink being thrown at Sean Babington tomorrow as they really, really push to try and get the trophy, the Winter Cup, from him. But Sean, well, not that good at maths, but he won the first race, he won the second race, and now Sean Babington crosses the line to win the third heat of DD2. And I reckon he probably is on pole position, isn't he, subject to all the checks after this final heat. But 3 wins out of 3. Perfect weekend so far for Sean Babington. But he needs it to be perfect tomorrow more than today. So he knows the job is only half done here. Great drive, though, by Sean Babington. So he wins the race. Zenderua in second place, 8/10 behind him. Oriol Damo Caballero, also very impressive here this weekend, was third. Andreas Bachmann, the Swede, fourth. A little bit away from the pace of the top 3 in that one, but he's had a solid day. Josh Collins was fifth. He held off Michael Christensen for the final lap or so. Henry Easthope, 7th. Alex Beji was next up in 8th place. 9th place, and by a long, long way, the best Masters driver was Miko Lane in 9th. 10th, Lorenzo Van Rees, who I spoke to on the grid just before the race, had a pretty solid result there. Now you can see on screen, if you're watching online at RGMMC TV, which you can hook into via rotaxmaxeurochallenge.com and watch live. Now you can see the results graphic on screen and the differences between the drivers in terms of gaps. Strawberry, ART and Motor Club Deportivo Crozel, the top 3 teams there, with Sean Babington, Zenderua and Oriol Damo Caballero. So there's the rest of the results. Louis Baudrond was the second best master there, down in 17th place, one of the Intrepid driver programs. So the Moroccan there in 17th place, 2 drivers from Morocco, because we've also got Nadir Kabaj here as well with Intrepid in this DD2 class. So good drive from Miko Line. Sean Babington then definitely is going to be on pole position with those 3 wins, isn't he? What about the others? Zenderua has had a second, a third and a fourth. So that would give him 9 points. Oriol Damo Caballero has had a third, a fourth and a second. So he's got 9 points as well. And Andreas Bachmann, a second, a third and a fourth. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 points. They've got the same set of results, those 3. Zenderua, Oriol Damo Caballero and Andreas Bachmann. So that's going to go down on a count back, isn't it? They've all had a second, they've all had a third, they've all had a fourth. I think they then look back to qualifying times, don't they? Zenderua, I think, this is all unofficial, but I think it would be in this case Zenderua that will get the front row of the grid, because they've had the same set of results, those 3, but Zenderua had the better qualifying session. So anyway, we'll find out later, but certainly that's what I'd expect, and certainly I'd expect that we'll be seeing Sean Babington on pole position for the pre-final tomorrow. Then you can see the rest of the results. Guillaume Berthaud was doing pretty well there to come from the back up to 20th and finish as the 3rd best master. Florent Lambert made some progress later on in the race to finish 4th in class. 5th in class, Christophe Adams, been a little bit quiet by his standards so far this weekend. And there's the other Moroccan driver, I say, Nadir Kabaj for Intrepid, coming through to finish 6th in his class. Martin Pearce is having a shocker, I'm afraid, and that's not any kind of reflection on what a good driver he is. He's just having all sorts of technical nightmares this weekend.